Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Computer analysts agree that the industry is rapidly approaching a dramatic slowdown of Moore's Law. The going estimate is that unless something radically changes in how we compute all of those ones and zeros, we'll see Moore's Law begin to trickle in by the early 2020s. But fear not. This doesn't mean your Facebook machine or Snapchat enabler. This doesn't mean your Facebook machine or Snapchat enabler is going to be obsolete anytime soon. Really, this is a problem for the tech industry, not necessarily the consumer. You, the consumer. Well, at least not the average Joe plopped down on the couch, filling his Amazon cart while reruns of Seinfeld drone on in the background to create the illusion he's not actually alone. Now I've made myself sad. Let's get back on track by first explaining what Moore's Law is in terms that Joe will understand. First and foremost, Moore's Law is not a universal, unchanging law like that of gravity, thermodynamics, or how much sugar goes directly to my gut. Moore's Law is named after the Intel co-founder Gordon Moore. In layman's terms, back in 1965, Moore noticed an industry trend that computing power doubled roughly every 18 to 24 months. In other words, the computer you bought today would be twice as powerful as the computer you bought 2 years ago. So, honestly, the fact that it's called a quote-unquote law is laden with a heaping helping of hubris. The more accurate title would be Moore's trend, but whatever, here we are. The TLDR argument for trend versus law is that if transistor density doubled every 2 years, as Moore's law suggests, by 2050 the size of a transistor would have to be smaller than a single atom of hydrogen. For clarity, hydrogen is the smallest element in the universe. It's literally the first element in the periodic table. So, again, I maintain that Moore's trend is far more accurate. The problem the industry faces as we approach the early 2020s is that even 30 years before the theoretical dead end of Moore's Law, it is proving extremely difficult to further shrink already microscopic transistors. Again, in Joe's terms, transistors do the heavy lifting in the processor. Transistors put the life-size doll in Lonely Joe's Amazon shopping cart. So why am I bringing all of this up? What's the point, you nerd? I hear you say. Well, the next 5 to 10 years are going to be a tumultuous, albeit fascinating time for computer technology, and it's going to be interesting to see how industry titans like Intel weather the storm. For sake of argument, I'll just use the two biggest CPU competitors, for example, Intel and AMD. I picture Intel and AMD in their canoes, paddling ferociously upstream in Moore's River. They are both competing to get to the source of the river, but as they approach the source, it becomes ever steeper as it becomes clear that the source is a mountain, and their canoes will then be rendered useless to get over the mountain. The first to turn the canoe into an airplane wins. As the industry approaches the physical limits of Moore's Law, it is no longer about doubling the density of how many transistors can be packed onto a silicone wafer. The need arises for a revolutionary change in the way we compute data in the first place. The first to do that opens Pandora's box in computing power. Whoever unlocks that paradigm will instantly hurtle humanity into a virtually limitless future. Within the next 10 years, you could see the phone in your pocket rendered no different than an abacus. I chose my words carefully when saying Pandora's box. This would be Adam and Eve's new Apple. Chose those words carefully too. It would be the new knowledge of good and evil, much in the same way nuclear research cured disease and gave us the atom bomb. Now we could wield a power that could do 80 years of research in less time than it takes to boot the computer. That is the next revolution in computing power. Until then, the industry titans are going to try and do their best with what they currently got. And right now, it's a bit of a mess that in a lot of ways is going to get worse before it gets better. AMD's approach is to slap as many processing cores as possible into their CPUs. That's why, you get Umpteen cores in a CPU, but it's the size of your hand. AMD is squeezing the last profitable drops out of Moore's Law simply by making CPUs bigger, and Intel is playing catch-up. The Core Wars, quote-unquote, is but one of the few manifestations of Moore's Law sputtering to an end. A parallel approach to simply offering more cores is the increasing race for programmers to streamline, simplify, and produce altogether more elegant code. Think about it like this. The other day, I slipped on my shoes, scooped turds out of the litter box. The cat's, not mine. I use a different box. It's a little bigger. Tied up the plastic bag, put it in the trash outside, grabbed my car keys, turned on the ignition, shifted into reverse, backed out of my parking spot, put it into first gear, then second, then third, and so on until I navigated enough traffic and distance to get to Micro Center and buy a giant TV I don't need. Or, more efficiently, I recently bought a big TV from Micro Center. Making programming code more efficient gets the point across quicker so you can make more points. So, making the CPU bigger while making code more efficient is one beneficial way we eke out the last drops of Moore's Law. However, there are some perils to avoid, and Intel is squirming a bit, even just in the PR department. Recently, Intel lifted the review embargo on their latest processor, the Core i9-9980XE. And to cut to the chase, they purposefully left out some product details, knowing that it would put off consumers. The thing is, every tech reviewer and their mother would instantly discover and report those shortcomings. In brief, in the 9980XE's case, it's basically that it's actually worse than the outgoing model in many cases, like base clock under load and power draw. If there is any improvement, it's been demonstrated to be marginal. So in the scramble towards the inevitable end of Moore's Law, Intel is showing signs of consumer mismanagement. Deception is not a winning business strategy when whatever you're hiding is instantly discovered. All you've done is lie to the consumer. Honesty would be the best policy, and it's a dire sign of the times when an industry titan is shaking enough in their boots to see deception as the most viable strategy. It implies that they have nothing ready yet to carry them past the early 2020s, or the end of Moore's Law. To close this out, I'm not saying that computers will get crappier, just that at worst, they will stagnate while programmers take up the slack, and that's actually a good thing. It's still progress. It may just be a little slow going until we crest the new horizon of computing. WorthTheWeight.co. WEIGHT. Every geek can use help with their nutrition. WorthTheWeight.co. WEIGHT. A fast 30 seconds for Audi Central Houston before we start this segment of Geek Therapy Radio. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com, where you can get an Audi in every budget from the A3 to the R8. They all have the fuel efficiency, the safety, and of course the technology. Oh, we can geek out about the technology all day long here on Geek Therapy Radio. So make sure you check out AudiCentralHouston.com and cruise on over to Audi Central Houston. When you go to Audi Central Houston, tell them that Geek Therapy Radio sent you. You're back with me, Johnny Hemberger, mental curator. Geek Therapy Radio. I try to change up those words so that I don't say the same thing every single time. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I tried to switch it up. I have a mental guest in here. Mental guest.
Mental?
Not mental like...
You make me sound like I'm
mental,
insane.
Like, no, you're not insane. Chris Little. Chris, before we get into it, we're going to talk about bionic implants and stuff and other things. Plug whatever you want to plug, your social media, anything like that.
I have a Twitter at Real Chris Little. I hardly post on it. It's mainly political and fishing. Nothing about bionics. But if you're curious about my opinion on it, and this
your podcast, are you still doing that?
Kind of fell apart because there's like a 13-hour difference between myself and other Chris that I do it with.
You said he's in, where is he?
He's in South Korea.
South Korea, okay.
Right, it's a little difficult.
It's difficult I understand.
Right, because he's stationed there, and his schedule keeps getting flipped around.
I didn't know he's in the military.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing over there. Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to the topic du jour, de evening, de morning, whenever you're... I should learn those French words. I knew them at one point. Du jour means day of the day. La fenêtre. What is that?
That's window.
Window.
La porte.
La camera. That's the room we're in. We're in a room. Anyways, so implants. You came in here the other day. You're saying, what do you think about implants? And at first I was thinking like boobs and butt and like, what do you... No, you asked, I think you said, would you get implants? And I was like, what do I need?
Like bionic implants.
Bionic implants.
Yes.
And honestly, that's not just a joke. You just caught me off guard. Would you get implants? Like, what? Sarah says I have no butt. Do I really need a butt? Okay, so bionic implants. I've broached this briefly on the show before, but maybe I didn't give it so much thought. The first thing that comes to my mind would be like an RFID thing, like in your finger, to like pay for.
Which is interesting because a lot of people, when I ask them, "Are you interested in bionics or implants?" they instantly think, "Oh, arms and legs."
Yeah.
But
or like muscle, like let's say you're paralyzed and maybe you get some implant to help your muscles.
Right, absolutely. I don't think anyone would have a problem if they're paralyzed getting some bionic legs.
So what implants were you thinking the other day when you walked in here? And was anything specific?
Well, I had asked 2 people before you if they would get bionic implants, and both of them, it was a very stern no. And to me, it doesn't make sense.
So what would you get? Is there anything in mind? Okay. So you'd pay with you already pay with credit cards and stuff with your thumbprint, more or less.
See, I
you know where this is going is Mark of the Beast type territory. I'm sure someone has made that biblical parallel to like, well, it's the mark of the beast. Take this or else you can't buy food, you can't function in society unless you get this mark on you or you get this implant. And I think a lot of people might have religious hang-ups on that. Mine aren't so much religious as far as just like what benefit to me could it really really do.
So I was actually driving to work one day and I asked my girlfriend, no real point in it. I asked her, would you get a bionic implant? And she's very much against it. And I said, okay, well, why? She said, I feel like it's not you after a certain part. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you an analogy. And I'll ask you the same thing.
Okay.
If you have an axe for 5 years, you replace the handle 4 times, is it the same axe?
No. I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. I'm already going to hold 1 second. When you're getting an implant, you're not taking away anything. You're just adding something. So I agree. I don't think it takes away from a person to get a bionic implant. Mm-hmm. If we're it's not like a prosthetic leg.
Right.
Or like regrowing your foot in a lab and putting it on or something like that. I don't think implants fall into that category. It's
so the one implant I can almost get everyone on board with is some sort of SD card reader that has some interface with your mind. So you can basically store the equivalent of a dictionary page or extra pictures that you wouldn't be able to forget.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even now, current SD card readers can read up to 1 terabyte. Probably some more. I've not been following it as strongly as other things.
That's interesting. Let's hold on that for a second, because let's say you can get some sort of implant that maybe records from your eyeball, and you want to remember something. You just look at something and just like tap the implant in your head or tap the region to trigger the thing of like record this audio, record this video.
Have you seen Black Mirror?
No.
Okay, there's a little bit of a spoiler here to anyone who wants to watch Black Mirror. Great show, you definitely should. It's like a modern day Twilight Zone.
Okay.
If you smoked a lot of pot beforehand to come up with the premise.
It's just really trippy.
Something similar. It was called a grain, and it would record your entire life. Right? If your eyes were open, it was recording video and audio. It would have it all the time.
The whole thing.
That's a little extreme to me.
Yeah.
I would only have it record like we were saying, like pictures.
Like when you want, like your wedding day.
Yeah, I'd
standing there at the altar, and
right.
and maybe and it could be something like for Alzheimer's, like something like that could help in that sort of arena.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it would cure autism, but it might help.
Could help.
Like, it would flash in front of the patient's eyes, this face, and it would say, son.
Right.
Born, give you info, so you don't, like, you did forget him, but then it reminds you anytime you see a person that from your life, it would help the Alzheimer's patient go, oh, I know this person's supposed to be here, versus somebody walking in to take advantage of them or something like that. Like, this is an unknown person.
So I am
interesting,
very much pro bionics, and I would absolutely in a heartbeat, if it met all the requirements, I would upload my mind into a robot. I'd do it.
I don't mean to laugh at you. That's I mean, theoretically, yeah, man, that's getting into some really kind of ethical stuff.
Can you upload a mind? And is it the same person?
Right. And then you'd be like, well, most people would be like, well, what about the soul? Would it take your soul? And I guess that depends what you do and don't believe about a soul.
Right.
Would you want? So you just said theoretically you would want to live forever before you die, downloading everything you are into a robot that can go on.
I don't necessarily want to live forever. I want to live well past 80. Possibly centuries more.
Yeah.
I want to look back upon a life of achievement and say, you know what, I'm done. I had a good run. I'm fine with passing now. I want it to be on my terms, and that's why I'm okay with being a robot. Because that's essentially what it would be if you were to upload your mind like that.
So so let's say you have and we've got like a minute left or so. Let's say you have you have some terminal cancer. The doctor's giving you a couple months to live, but you haven't fulfilled your mission, everything you wanted to achieve yet. And they say, okay, well, we can take everything you are now, and after you die, we'll just upload it to this robot, and you can finish your work until you get to that 80, 90, 100 years, and you think, okay, my work is done.
I mean, for some it'd be 100 years. For me, it's like 300.
At that point, you can choose shutdown, restart, reboot, update firmware, whatever.
Update firmware.
So with the time here, I don't know. It would depend on the implant. If there was an implant that could say your eyes would be like perfect,
you'd do it.
I will probably lean. Not no question. I would question, but I would lean heavily towards it.
See, I want to be full cyborg. I completely embrace it. I'd want the mobility of a human.
Yeah, I'm not saying the idea isn't cool. It's just there's a whole lot we can't get into right now in this segment. Obviously, that's probably why you say we can talk about it for hours. Anyways, Chris Little, thank you for being on Geek Therapy Radio again this week. We'll continue this conversation in the near future. I'm darn sure.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me.
Cool. Awesome drinks, amazing food, arcade games, and karaoke. Where else does a geek need to go to have some fun? They go to Kung Fu Saloon at 5317 Washington Avenue. The best drinks, the most mind-boggling food, and a great selection of arcade games, and you can even get your tay-tay on with some karaoke. That's Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue, kungfusaloon.com, and tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent you. A quick 30 seconds up front here for Audi Central Houston. Guys and gals, when I tell you to go to Audi Central Houston, it's not just because they are partners with Geek Therapy Radio. It's because I have been a customer myself, and even my father before me, a customer of Audi Central Houston. So I know that they will take great care of you, and I know you're going to get the highest quality automobile you can possibly buy and drive around these Texas roads over at Audi Central Houston. Start your perusing at AudiCentralHouston.com. If you're just joining Geek Therapy Radio in the studio, I've got friend of the show, Jeremy.
Back again, man. Every time. I love being on this show. This is like my passion, too. I'm kind of being a nerd by either being on it and listening to it at the same time.
See, you're not living vicariously through me if you're actually on the show providing content.
So I'm more of a specialist?
You're a specialist. Yes, I have to reserve the term mental contributor to that goes to my fiance, because I'm the mental curator, because she's been on. I call her the mental contributor. What would yours be? Since you've been on probably other than her, you guys might have been on the same amount of times.
Yes, well, she's more of a specialist because she keeps you in mind.
A geek guest. Whatever. I'm not going to spend all this 9 minutes thinking about what the title of you will be. Let's just say guest for now. So you caught me in the hall earlier, and you actually, I am kind of ashamed of this as a geek, that I wasn't immediately up to speed on what you mentioned, but it made sense, and it's just something I completely figured, and it's something we talked about a few weeks ago on the show after NVIDIA released, the graphics card company, NVIDIA released the new cards, the RTX line of cards. What did you tell me in the hall? And I said, save it, we'll talk about it
It's just
on the
making
show.
me sad. I was so passionate about having these brand new graphics cards. I bought a new PC. I got a great, powerful little this processor that's going to take me for the next 8 years. And
10
the
core
last component, I got the i9, the 10 core, and the last component I've been waiting for is this graphics card. So I've been just watching it like a hawk. Is it worth it? Is it not? Is it worth it? And originally we had discussed I was going to go for it, just going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
The prices came out, and they weren't what they said they were going to be. They were way more expensive because the demand is just up so high.
Yeah.
And then here comes the final RTX numbers, because ray tracing has finally been released. EA decided to release Battlefield 5 with the update on Windows 10. Now ray tracing is ready to go, and they plugged in the numbers. And I think you can cut these numbers down to a third.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, oh my goodness, I have 120 frames per second, I'm going to be in great shape. Cut that down to 30 or 40 frames per second. Now you're below any type of competitive level for a first-person shooter.
When you enable ray tracing.
When you enable ray tracing.
So, as it turns out, just as expected, I mean, this wasn't going to be a magic wand, this wasn't going to be sorcery for image quality at no cost. Sorry if I'm moving on the microphone, it keeps sinking on me. I have that effect on it.
It's got a limp.
Yeah, it's got a little limp. We need a little blue pill for this microphone. Anyways, so I think we all kind of knew and weren't surprised that enabling ray tracing would create take a hit on the frame rate. But I guess, and we'll get to our second thing we're going to talk about here in a minute, but I guess it's up to you, the listener, the consumer. How important is it to see, extremely detailed reflections in a character's eye, or even more realistic shadow? Basically, ray tracing is, just to recap, bring it up to speed a little bit, is it basically calculates how light reflects off of different surfaces, and that's a whole new set of calculations. It's a whole new subset of the processor that takes care of these.
Is really doing it for you now.
And AI and everything like that. So ray tracing was going to be a boon for graphics realism, not frame rate. I think we're a few years away from frame rate. Unless you follow the Geek Therapy Radio blog, I just did I'll tell you, Jeremy, an article, a piece, and I put it on YouTube as well, that we are beginning to approach the end of Moore's Law. Moore's Law basically says that every 2 years, processing power doubles. So if you bought a computer now, if you bought a computer in 2 years, according to Moore's Law, it would be twice as powerful as a computer in 2018. But we're seeing a slowdown. It used to be once every 18 months to 2 years. Now we're seeing it down to about 3 years. And really, it's Moore's trend, not Moore's Law, because there's only so far you can get with it before you reach the physical limitations of how many transistors they can put into a CPU. By 2050, it's all over anyway with transistors fitting onto a CPU, because at that point, the transistors would have to be so small that they'd be smaller than an atom of hydrogen.
Well, you can apply this to the graphics as well.
That's what's happening. That's why ray tracing is a thing, is because we're pushing the limits of how many transistors we can fit on a chip. So NVIDIA said because it's been a while since they put out a new card. They said we need something to make this a viable cell to market this. And it's exactly what we got. We got ray tracing. Were we ready for ray tracing yet? I don't really think so. I don't think it matters that much to actual hardcore gamers.
On top of that, they're saying that there's going to come a point where you go to 4K, you go to 5K, 8K. There's going to come a point where your eyes visually can't notice a difference.
Yeah. So
now they have to expand sort of sideways instead of how many bits or how many little pixels can you get on a screen. They're going to have to come up with new ways to make it look pretty. That's in simple terms. So reflections and new ways that light can bounce off of things.
So we know visually games will get better, but like I said, we're reaching this. If Moore's Law, I'd say Moore's trend, is this upward slope of power and graphics and everything like that. We're reaching, it's the curve of it is starting to level off and plateau a little bit. And they say it's going to really, unless something radical changes in the next few years, the plateau of Moore's Law is the early 2020s, where you're just going to see things not getting much better. And I said in the YouTube video on the topic that Threadripper, the AMD's
More and
processor
more
Threader, all more cores, but it's the size of the palm of your hand.
Yeah, they're massive.
So they're just making it bigger, and now Intel's doing the same thing. It's the core war. So we had CPUs that were pretty small for a time. Now they're getting bigger again because we can't change the density of the transistors on there. So if we can't change the density, let's make things bigger. Let's also work on the coding to make the coding more eloquent and work better with processors. But that's all on ray tracing and NVIDIA and stuff for now on Moore's Law. You can catch that on Geek Therapy Radio YouTube. Real quick, Jeremy, you're here in the middle of your any social media, anything to plug real quick.
Just at Big Jeremy Benson, keeping it simple.
At Big Jeremy Benson. Okay, so was it last week or the week before here? You bust into my studio like the Kool-Aid man.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You're like, Johnny, I made noodles. Like, whoa, back up. What are you talking about?
Just ramen noodles.
And it's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like, I made noodles last night. I was like, oh, that's sweet. You took a 10-cent package of ramen noodles and maybe put some spices in there, made it really tasty. But you actually made noodles. You got flour and eggs and different ingredients, and you made homemade noodles. And strangely enough, I didn't. It was really cool that you did that. Of course, the Geek Therapy Radio is all about hearing what people are into and what they're doing, because it might inspire other people to do the same.
Sure.
So maybe someone, like, really at the basic level, maybe someone's really depressed or going through something. You never know where someone is at in life who's listening to this. So when you came in and you were all fired up about making homemade noodles, it got me fired up about making homemade noodles. So I went home that night.
Passion.
Yes, I went to Randall's on the way home and I got some bread flour and I bought eggs because I didn't know if we had eggs. Turns out we did have eggs. Now I had 2 cartons of eggs in the thing. But I was making noodles. My first try was pretty good. They were pretty hard. I think I cut them too thick. But what has been we're the noodle boys.
I mean, when I do something, I want to do it 110%. Like, I want to not only research it, but figure out the slight changes you can make to make something even more awesome. And when it comes to pasta noodles, or if it's no exception. So I busted into your door the other day and I said, Johnny, you've got to try this. I'm going to bring some noodles to you the other day. I made pasta from scratch. And now I'm at a point where I'm on my 4th or 5th batch, and it's tasting better each time. Just a little different mixture here and there. And on top of that, when you're saying something about even if somebody's depressed, some people like to clean their house to help them think or get over something mentally.
Yeah, Sarah does. Yeah.
Just rolling out that dough for 10, 15 minutes.
Yep.
It's the most peace my mind has been.
It's geek therapy.
3 months.
It's geek therapy. It's geeking out over making good noodles and that continual pursuit of making them better and better and better each time. And then you get that Zen state. Oh, we could talk about this. In Tetris, you read a state. It's called a state of flow.
Okay.
You can get into that state through Tetris. Artists get into the state of flow. You get into a state of flow when you're kneading that dough. It's that repetitive movement that gets your brain into a zone. It starts shutting off things in your brain, and you get into this flow that feels no drug can recreate the flow you get into naturally through art or through doing some sort of hobby when you're really focused in there.
When I sit there and start recording bands, same thing.
8 hours fly by, you have no idea.
You forget to eat.
So you forget to eat, and then when you remember, you can make noodles.
But the best part is you don't get to eat Tetris. You get to eat these noodles.
Right.
And they taste so good.
At the end of this flow, when you come out of the flow that you just been this Zen state, you're like, oh, you can actually eat the product of the Zen state. Jeremy, it was an absolute pleasure, as always, to have you on Geek Therapy Radio. Thanks for stopping by.
Whenever you need me, man, I'm here.
8millionstories.org. That's 8EIGHT. 8millionstories.org gives troubled youth a second chance at a real future. For more information or to get involved, 8millionstories.org. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. A quick 60 seconds here for Audi Central Houston, because they will take such great care of you, and what you will drive away in is a rolling masterpiece. Please go to AudiCentralHouston.com and check out the new A6, the new A8, and the all-new Q8. You've also heard me talking about the Audi e-tron. The Audi e-tron is 100% electric. It is an SUV. It'll carry your entire family around in style, of course, but you won't burn a drop of gasoline, all the technology, all of the safety. I was going to say all of the fuel efficiency, but you're not using fuel at all. So the Audi e-tron is the way to go. Make sure you're going to AudiCentralHouston.com and registering and signing up so you can be one of the first to get your new Audi e-tron. All that can be found, all the sexiness and style and safety and more at AudiCentralHouston.com. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I promise I'm not a robot. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Quick reminder, since I used to do this a lot, now I don't do it so much, I don't think. Maybe it feels like I don't do it so much, I don't think. Anyways, Geek Therapy Radio, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It would warm my heart if you would like, follow, and subscribe to all those things, especially the YouTube. I put so much cool stuff on YouTube. And if you want to go check it out, it would make me smile if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and showed your friends. There is stuff that I cover on there that I don't cover on the show. I've got a new video going up soon about how Apple scare-rouses me. I don't think of myself as, mainly like a PC fanboy, Windows fanboy, I guess you could call it. Definitely not an Apple fanboy. I don't even like the term fanboy or fangirl, meaning that you're just 100% devoted irreversibly to one product over the other. But other than my iPad, I've never really had a Mac computer. And what's a computer? And the more I think about it, the more I'm tempted to get a Mac. But I guess you'll have to go see that on the Geek Therapy Radio YouTube, my thoughts on that, because I rake Apple over the coals, and it goes along the lines of, why Apple scare rouses me enough to actually maybe buy a Mac in the future. Scare rouse, that's blending two words together, scared and aroused. I can only speak for men, but there are times when men get scare roused. And Apple is scare-rousing me enough to maybe get a MacBook Air at some point, but I don't know. You'll have to go subscribe to the Geek Therapy Radio YouTube channel and see my full thoughts on that, because I don't hold any punches. Here in the last segment of Geek Therapy Radio, I'm just going to go over a few stories. One being that Sony is skipping out on E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo 2019. So E3 2019, Sony's not there. They say they're going to explore, quote, new and familiar ways to engage our community in 2019. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm not going to speculate too much. But just Sony's not going to be showing anything off at E3, and that's kind of major news. I'd imagine. I don't know. What are they going to do? Show off a video game, show off a PS5. I don't know what they got in the works, but you're definitely not going to see it where you will see everyone else's offerings. Sony is not going to be at E3 2019. A story came across my desk here that's got me. It's not the story itself that frazzles me. If I can be frazzled. Listeners, have you ever heard me frazzled on this show? No, not me. I never get frazzled. Disney has released a new trailer for their live-action Dumbo. And Tim Burton. It's a Tim Burton thing. Oh, I'm not recording this on video, but I just took my glasses off because, like I said, it's not the fact that it's Dumbo. It's... Why do we need live-action remakes of beloved classic movies? Why couldn't Dumbo just be Dumbo? If you sat, I was going to say millennial, but I was raised watching movies like Dumbo. If you raised one of the iGens, somebody born in the year 2000 and onward, somebody really young who's basically born with a screen in their hand and video games in their face from birth, who they've been inundated with all this technology and all the CGI they see in movies. Here's my argument. Why do you think that kid, that 7-year-old, maybe you've got a daughter or a son or something like that, and they're 7 or 8 years old, and you plop them down in front of the original Dumbo, do you think any of Dumbo's impact would be lost on them because it wasn't loaded with CGI and live action because Dumbo didn't look like a real dinosaur, wasn't a computer-generated dinosaur, real-looking elephant. Do you think your kid is just going to be like, this is dumb? No. They might say it's dumb for another reason, and maybe they just don't like it. But I'm saying the fact that it's an old film, what was 30s? 40s? 30s? When Dumbo first came out? Hand-drawn, cell by cell, frame by frame, hand-drawn. I think that in itself would be a cool factor. If I was a kid growing up and I understood as much, you mean humans drew every single frame of this? That would have blown my mind. Versus I watch a live action Dumbo, like they pop this into a computer and the computer did most of the work. That's not to take away from the artistic abilities of computer designers and people who do art like this with computers. Not at all. I'm just saying, did we need a Dumbo remake? Was the original not good enough that we needed a new one? But I know in my cynicism, the actual answer to this and to why this exists is money. It's so that Disney can make money. And I'm not going to delude myself to think it's for any reason like, we really felt that we needed to do justice to the original by breathing new life. No, that's bullcrap. Next story. You've heard me mention on the show months and months ago, that I went on this rant about, chips and credit cards. Now your credit card has a chip in it. It's had a chip in it for a long time, since, 2000, I don't even know, 12, 9, 10, whatever. When the chip first came out, I first saw it in Europe. When I got back from Europe, everyone had the chip in Europe. When I got back here, card readers required the chip. So I had to get a new card that had the chip in it. Guess what? Turns out fraud is on the way up, and they're asking why aren't chip credit cards stopping fraud in the U.S.? Fraud is on the rise, despite the fact that we have these chips in our cards. Well, my original argument, if you remember, was you haven't done a damn thing here to mitigate fraud. Here's what has actually happened. Used to be a magnetic strip and numbers. Those were the identifiers on your credit card or debit card. Now you have 3 things for somebody to steal. You have the information off the chip, you have the physical numbers, and you have the magnetic strip. Now there are 3 things that thieves can get. So I hate being right. Geek Therapy Radio, thanks for listening. We'll be back with more next week, and make sure you subscribe to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast in your favorite player, because I put out midweek geek each week. I can't talk. Just subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio podcast in your favorite podcast app, but especially the iHeartRadio app. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. I know you've heard me talk a lot about Audi Central Houston on Geek Therapy Radio, but it's easy. Even if they weren't partners of the show, I would still send friends and family to Audi Central Houston. I have been a customer of Audi Central Houston since even before Geek Therapy Radio was ever on the air. My dad was a customer of Audi Central Houston, so I know how they treat customers at Audi Central Houston. They treat you like family. And what are you getting when you go to Audi Central Houston? And remember, there's an Audi for every budget. From the A3 to the R8, there's an Audi in every budget at Audi Central Houston. What you're getting is all the safety. What you're getting is all the sophistication. It really is a rolling piece of art. You're getting all the fuel efficiency, and you're getting all the technology that us geeks and everybody can geek out over. They are absolutely amazing. The new A6, the new A8, the new Q8, all can be found at Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. Tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent you.